All right, Mr. Ryan Yada, the Yads man himself,
Are
aka
we?
Neo, aka the coolest guy I know. Good morning,
That's a
sir.
that's a big statement. I don't know about that, but hey, man, good to see you. Good morning.
Maybe I don't know a lot of people. Who knows? It's all
Maybe
a
it
matter of
means just
perspective.
maybe it just means cold. And, no, but how are you?
I'm good, sir. It's been a week. It's definitely been a week. Lots of stuff going on. Summer going on. I'm covering for my business partner at our office, and so it's just lots happening.
Yeah, right. Summer somehow, yeah. It things can always get full, right? Summer, I'm trying to make it things a little slower, take it a little easier, but uh, things just show up, and it's good. It's full, right? But uh, tests sometimes your time management abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what's been swirling around in your brain, sir?
Well, right now, I was just reminded by that shirt you've got on, the Superhuman Summit. That was a long time ago, but that shirt, that's good, man. It still fits. It still looks good. Mine totally disintegrated.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite shirts. I remember that quite vividly. I remember being at that conference and talking to you about developing some technology to help us in our chiropractic practice, some diagnostic technology when it comes to HRV, right, heart rate variability, and that was yeah. I just remember being out in the hallway. It's so often I find that going to a conference or going to a seminar or any sort of big event, the things that I remember the most are not the actual event things. It's like little aside conversations. It's little things that we have, on the just on the side. It's never the thing. It's not the thing I paid for, but it's the thing that I get that is so valuable. And I think about that. Well, as it relates to our kids, I remember. I think we've talked about this before too. Jerry Seinfeld talked about quality time with his kids and that not being the most important thing. It's like the throwaway times. Those are the times where you'll just actually make the memories. It's the times driving to and from school. For Jerry, he would talk about his just having cereal with his kids at midnight and just those little kind of throwaway times. But those are the times that we remember. And so there's so much magic in just the little moments and how we as parents want to just create these big grand gestures and big grand moments for our kids, and we think that's going to be the most memorable thing, but maybe it'll just be one of the kids tooting on the bed and everybody busts out laughing, and that's the times that we remember. Like, it's so fascinating.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. I mean, because you could be in the mode of, like, say, for example, that conference, like, oh, I got to be in the room, I got to be in my seat, I just got to absorb everything, and so you could, not let some of those moments happen, right, where you're out in the hall and you're engrossed in a conversation, or you're meeting somebody new. And same with your kids, right? You could be all about, no, it's all about the scheduled time that we made happen, and you're not present, or you're not allowing some of those other, totally random things to happen. But yeah, how magical it can be if you're just willing to allow some of those other times to unfold, that you're fully present with them, that you're, yeah, not totally rigid about having to go a certain way. Because yeah, I remember, you're right. I remember, Chris was at that too, right? And Suki and Lenny.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally remember some of those. I mean, I don't remember the exact content of our conversation, but I remember being out in the hallway and just jamming about things. And I remember that event. I mean, I don't think they ever put another one on, but there was something
No,
about
they
that event
didn't.
too. And Dario came and he has the shirt too. Yeah, yeah, I wish they'd put another one on.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, I also remember something about that conference. I met one gentleman who was was well, I thought he was just a larger than life personality. He was a mentor of mine for years and years, and right now his name is slipping from my from my memory. I can't believe this is happening right now. But I remember meeting him, and he's very short, or shorter. And I remember meeting him going, oh, like this is not who I thought. I thought it was going to be this like larger than life character. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like he was, he was Lance Armstrong's chiropractor. Why can't I remember his name right now? This is awful.
It'll come. Yeah.
Yeah. But, and yeah, he was Lance Armstrong's chiropractor, and he was like the chiropractor to the stars. And he's written a bunch of books that I've read, and he was he's this coach. And I was like, oh my God, like, and then I meet him, I'm like, oh, and he was just the coolest guy too. He was so kind. And we've gone on to actually do a couple things together since. But, I just remember it's so often, like when I make things up in my head, when all of a sudden I'm confronted with reality, it's like, oh, it's very different. Very different. Like, why did I make that up in my head? Very, very interesting.
Yeah, right. The assumptions, the stories, just everything about our own experience that we can put on something and then be confronted and it'd be very different.
Oh, Dr. Jeff Spencer. Dr. Jeff Spencer, that's who it was. Dr. Jeff, if you're listening to this, I'm so sorry. I forgot your name for just a split second.
What happens? Yeah, we're live. Couldn't just Google it or look in your notes. Or...
Yeah.
Yeah. One topic that you when we were jamming about maybe a topic for today was you had a good idea there too. I liked around just being non-judgmental, and especially when it comes to ourselves and our loved ones. Yeah, maybe you could unpack that a little bit. Let me know what you were thinking there.
Well, I thought I was thinking about it from the standpoint. Well, it came up to in my mind from the standpoint of working with some clients, and I thought about my clients, and I thought about, well, there's so much parallel between working with our kids and this just idea Tony taught us years ago is that the number one thing to be able to help someone create change is to create rapport with the other person. And you create rapport by understanding and appreciating their world. Like you step into someone's world and like, how does this person see the world? And you can't do that and judge someone at the same time. And so nobody will be influenced by you if they feel judged by you. And so this idea that, just understanding how someone would come up with whatever actions or whatever reasonings they have for doing whatever that they do, when we can start to understand that, it brings compassion, it brings empathy, it brings grace to the situation. And then we can start to then get leverage and interrupt patterns, all the other steps that Tony teaches to create lasting change. But it really starts with that. And with our kids, it's the same. Like I have so many times caught myself thinking my kids should be acting a certain way or should think this, or when presented with an opportunity or presented with a moment, presented with an experience, they would or they should do X, Y, or Z. And so often, there's a stereotypical thing that like someone, like a kid would do something really bad or destructive or something like that, and then the parent would just go, I've heard so many parents go, why would you do that? And in the moment, well, it's like, it's not that the kid has, like, you're going to rationalize with a child, and in the moment they may not even understand what they're doing. They may not understand, have a critical thought about why they did what they did. And so that time to discipline or to try to figure all that out is not like necessarily in the moment when all that chaos is happening, but it's really just have non-judgment. So just put yourself into their shoes. Like just try to understand and appreciate where they're coming from. And I know as my daughter gets older, like the more that I feel like I can do that, the more that she opens up to me, the more that she feels comfortable talking to me, because she knows that I'm not going to judge her. And somehow we think that as we grow up, like we'll kind of grow out of that. But there's that basic, I think that base instinct that we all have, that it's we'll open up to people when we're not feeling judged by them. You know.
Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I totally, well, I hear what you're saying. Do you have an example of, maybe how a way you used to do it versus now how you do it, or, some process, or how you get awareness when you know, might be judging or aren't judging, and how you not do that?
Well, so my kids are younger. So my kid's 8. So I don't have a lot of experience like that like talking to them, as people, where we'll kind of discuss a thing and kind of walk, get through something. But one thing that I have found myself doing, and it's just like a perspective shift, and how I'm maybe feeling like I'm judging myself or judging the moment, is the idea, and I think I learned this from Dr. Peter Tia, I believe, or someone else. But when I look at a moment, I think about, say, I'm 46 now. My oldest one is 8. My youngest one is 4. If all of a sudden all this chaos is happening and I'm judging a moment as bad, or something's not going my way, or something's not going our way, kids are acting out, I'll think, what if I was my 80-year-old self looking back on me right now? Like, what would that person say? Like, in the moment, I'm thinking, I just want this to stop. I want everything. I want peace. I want calm. I want order. But I know that if I look at it from an outside perspective, if I look at my 80-year-old self, man, like, I'll miss those times. I'll miss those times, and there's a mess on the floor, and the kids are just being kids, and yeah, I'll just miss that. And so I'll put myself back into that moment, going, okay, no, this is fine. This is okay. And so it's been a really good perspective shift. And all of a sudden, yeah, I'm not judging the moment anymore. I'm just appreciating it and understanding that this is a cycle. This is a season that we're in, and it's all okay.
Right. Yeah. 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 And I guess, yeah, as even as you're saying this, like the word judgment, it implies that there's as a judge, right? It implies that there's a right and a wrong, and yet I mean, there isn't really a right, like what I think is right may be totally different than what, let's say the other person that if we're caught up in judging, if the other person might have a totally different perspective on what quote unquote right is, right? So how, if we're not taking, as I heard you say before too, if we're not taking their view of the world into perspective, and we're sitting there judging, then we're not being a very good judge, because properly a judge would take all perspectives in and all evidence in, and then from that place be able to make a decision or have an opinion. But if we're just sitting there in our own mind, in our own righteousness, and our own bias, and our own experience, saying this is wrong or this is the way it needs to be, then we're not even being a very good judge.
So true. So true. Very biased.
That's a dictator, isn't it? Like if we're just taking one side of the story and then coming to a conclusion, that violates one of the 4 agreements too. We're all of a sudden making a whole slew of assumptions. But yeah, I know. Yeah, judgment. I know for me, what's been super helpful is to take. I mean, like you said, it's rapport. It's really making sure to take the time to understand that the other person's perspective. Because if you're coming from, like, I know I've said it lots, the 4 agreements. If I'm coming from a place where I don't want to make assumptions, then I do need to seek out what's going on for the other person. Like, I do want to seek out their experience of it. And the more I understand it, then I feel like it shifts from, yeah, well, even then, like, who gives me the right to be the judge, right? Where I get to make a determination of what's quote unquote right or wrong. Because, I don't know how many times there is a right way. But I do think that, a little softer wording would be opinion, right? I do feel like I'm going to offer my opinion and make that known, but I'm not going to, yeah, because that opinion stays within myself. Like, this is my opinion. This is what I think would be my version of right here. But then judgment flips it into, here's what I think right needs to be for everybody, you know? That's where I think it
Mhm.
also gets uncomfortable, is when you think that all of a sudden you know what's best. I mean, sometimes with our kids, we think we know what's best, but I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I think if we're going to be the judge, I think it's super important that we take all perspectives into consideration. And then, yeah, I know, at least for myself, what's helpful is to let it be known what, this is my opinion, especially even saying those words. This is my opinion here, and avoiding making assumptions. But yeah, it's a big topic.
Yeah. I find I feel like I feel like I'm a broken record so many times. We teach our kids the things so often that we are learning ourselves. And when I come from a place of like I'm uneasy with something, or I've got some things that are undealt with, or I've got some things that are unhealed within me, I tend to just project at my kids as opposed to just being an example for them. And the more that I can just come like from an example that I live like, or I lead how I live, then the better outcomes we have for everybody. But when I'm trying to just lead out of theory, or lead out of, like we said, as being a dictator, it never works out. And that's really not how our kids learn. Like, we can say things all day. I can say things to my kids all day. But if I'm doing the opposite, they're learning. There's a disconnect. They're also learning more from my actions than they are from my words. So it becomes so much more important. It becomes so much. There's so much more gravity to that. To me, just living the way that I'm meant to live, like choosing myself first, being responsible. We talked about this before, being able to respond to the moment, being responsible for me and responsible to them. And there's a responsibility first and foremost to be my best, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So yeah, being the example, and I thought you were also going to say just not judging ourselves too, like having that practice of, oh man, if I'm judging them, then there's a very good chance I'm judging myself, and therefore, yikes, where am I judging myself? And then catching ourselves in that talk about, oh man, I'm judging myself about this, and I think this should, yeah, that the one of the dirty words, should. Fine is another one. Oh, it's fine. But yeah, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I feel like to be that example of not being judgmental, it starts with us, is what I'm hearing you
Mm-hmm.
say as well. And I find that the shoulds come from, this assumption or this expectation that it should be different. It should be like this. Like we had a family vacation recently, and sure, I can make up all these shoulds about, oh, it should be like this. Everyone should just get along, and we should all want to do the same things, and we should all be, holding hands and singing songs. I could have all kinds of shoulds, and judging how it actually is showing up. And those are all assumptions. Those are all expectations. Those are all, stories I've made up in my head. Versus, no, there's a really great video, or sorry, it's an audio clip that my coach shared with me around expectations versus agreements. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like if we have these expectations, that's in the land that can lead us to the land of, oh, it should be like this because I expect it to be like this. Versus, a lot of times those expectations are, again, stuff that we've made up, but not what anyone else. It's not their expectations. That those are just mine. So therefore, again, I'm judging it because I think it needs to go a certain way, but no one else has agreed that it's going to go that way. So the video talks about the difference between expectations and agreements. Versus, if I can talk about what I would like, and then we make an agreement on, okay, yeah, and that's it can be an uncomfortable conversation, but it can be a co-creation of something. Okay, I need to match, or I need to align my opinions or what I'd like now with everybody else's. So now, and theirs is going, and often it's quite different than what I was thinking. So now we've got a situation. Okay, well, wow, that's what you want. Well, here's what I want, and then here's what, especially if you take 5 people on a family vacation. So then you get to a very different place than what I was assuming in my head, what I was expecting in my head, and then we got to a place where, okay, look, fine, it's going to look a little different than I thought, but here's where we're going to meet on. These are the agreements. We're going to do these things together. You can go and do that thing on your own, and now all of a sudden I've created a very different experience of what's going to happen versus what I had in my head. And yeah, in my opinion, that leads to a lot less shoulding, because now at least we've all agreed to what was going to unfold here. And then it's a different conversation. If something doesn't happen that we all agreed to, now, I'm not judging it. Now it's a conversation. Oh, okay, well, what happened? We talked about this. We agreed to it. Why didn't it happen this way? But yeah, I think getting out of the should land really helps. And what I found helpful is to move from, again, assumptions, move from expectations to agreements. Whether that's with myself, again, like, oh no, I agreed, I committed to myself to whatever it is, every day get up and do push-ups. I'm not living in a land of should anymore, because I've made that agreement with myself. Now, if I don't, okay, well, now we have a different conversation around why am I doing that?
Right. Man, this stuff is so, it seems so hard and seems so tricky, yet seems so simple and easy all the time.
Right.
It's like I complicate things so much in my own head all the time. I put all of these, all the shoulds and all these barriers in front of what is actually quite simple. That we have we create these agreements. We just be present. We have proper communication. We're open to other people. We love, we give, we serve. Yeah, pretty simple. How much, by the end of the day, I'm like, oh my God, what happened today? Like everything just went... Right. It's simple, chaos.
Yes. Not easy, but it's simple.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating just how our kids have, like, they just see things much more simple, or they express things much more simply. And I find so often, if I could just maybe take their lead on things. And one of the things that I find great, especially with my older one, because she's able to express it better, is just asking her in a moment, like asking her, like, how do you see this? Like, what are you seeing here? And what she comes up with, like, oh, that's great. Okay, that's way simpler than what I was thinking. That's way better than what I was thinking. Let's just do your stuff.
Yeah. They can be a lot more direct. They have a lot less stuff bouncing around in terms of, oh, what about this? What about that? What about that? There's no, boom, just like this. This would be fun. Oh yeah, fun's good. Let's do it that way.
Yeah. And I find, say, one challenge we're having with my 8-year-old, and Ev, if you ever listen to this, I'm always fascinated by what would our kids think if they heard this now and later on, like as they're adults, they come back and listen to this, like, oh, they're talking about me. But Ev, we're having a challenge with her sometimes, just not, or I feel like she should be more resilient in a moment, where I find there's things that just get to her. She gets really emotional, has big feelings about little things and things that I know that she can overcome. And like, we want her to create more resilience. And in that first piece about not judging her, I find challenging at times, because I'm like, man, like, we're in this moment. I'm like, dude, you should, like, you gotta, like, pick your head up, stop putting your head down, like, pick your head up, like be more confident. But I'm just projecting that as opposed to like, okay, well, where's this coming from? And knowing that she's had what I would consider like she's had a great life so far. She's never wanted for anything. And in that, she's also done some things that are challenging. She's also overcome hurdles. She's also done things that she's failed at and tried again and then got it. And somewhere along the way, there was a piece that, like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. In some moments, in potentially a pivotal moment, she either didn't have support or didn't have encouragement or was by herself and didn't see something through. And now it's kind of created this cycle where she'll give up on herself a lot quicker than I feel she can. And I know she has so much more potential. And so potentially maybe that's why I was thinking about all this, because I feel like I am judging her. And I don't want to, because I want to help her overcome this. I want her to, see how powerful she really is, and how these things that is affecting her or are affecting her, she's taking more negatively, aren't really that at all. So this parenting thing is it's a bitch, man.
It's not always easy. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And, yeah, I can think about that too with my middle one's 7, and I feel like similarly going through a phase right now where there's a lot more emotions coming up, like a lot bigger ones, seemingly around small things too. And I felt like she actually, in my opinion, had some more resilience even a year ago. But again, maybe that was sort of, more so that she just didn't have as many thoughts and feelings going on, so it was easier for her to plow through something. Like she used to be a way more aggressive skier even at 6 than she was 7. She was trying more things and wanting to do more tricks, and I was like, oh dad, get me double tip skis. I want to do ski backwards and do all these tricks like her older brother does. And or sorry, my youngest is 7. But she but then last year, or this past season, I can see that older now, there's a lot more things going on in her head between her ears, and there's a lot more emotions. And when she gets hurt, it's a bigger deal. And so I did catch myself sometimes being like, oh, why? What happened? You should be wanting to do these things. You wanted to do them last year. I helped your brother be able to do all these things. Why aren't there's all kinds of judgment that comes up in terms of, oh, I'm not doing a good enough job as her dad to support her, and it's worked out differently with her brother, and well, she's quitting on herself and not doing that. And I've been in that same position, and I feel like, can I, as you were saying too at the very beginning, can I be present to her experience of what's going on, and that there might be just a whole different mindset now for her. Now she's going through a whole different phase. This is a whole different season, and maybe it'll be completely different this next season, right? Maybe she'll want to all of a sudden do all these things again, or maybe she won't even want to ski anymore. I don't know, but yeah, I hear you. I've been there, and I. There are a lot of times on the mountain where I just like, okay, I'm gonna accept that this is where she's at, and this is where I'm at, and how can I make the best day of this? And so yeah, there was very different times on the mountain with her versus say her brother, who would have been off and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but she's wanting to sit there and eat snow, or go check out the castle that has the slide and go down that a whole bunch, and go in and have hot chocolate. I mean, it's just a very different day, and it's a taking your kids skiing is a wonderful practice around patience, around acceptance. I mean, there could be so many shoulds around how that day should have gone, but what what a great practice to just be like, no, this is where she's at, and this is the kind of day looks like we're going to have, and how can I make the most of it here
Yeah.
without judging,
Eh,
you know?
yeah. And on that, you had sent me a video yesterday of your son doing his aerobatics on his skis and going into, I guess, going into water, like falling into water. Dude, that was incredible. That was incredible. William's how old again?
12.
He's 12. And he's doing all these like flips and twists. And I was watching that, just that little short little clip you sent me. I was like, man, like what, how cool that he gets to, number one, experience that. Like that's it's an experience that most people will not be able to have. We live in the mountains and there's those facilities there. And, it's not something I had anywhere near me growing up. But even just to, like, I was watching him do that and like, wow, what did it take? Like how long did that take for him to get from just being able to ski? Like what happened to get to this point where he's doing all these flips and twists and landing in the water and just going backwards too. Like that was insane. And I was like, wow, like that's so cool. And how much he's had to overcome just to even get there. And he's 12. Like that is so rad. And I was thinking the first thing I thought of when you sent that to me was, number one, I was like, wow, that's super cool. And I'm 46. I couldn't even do a quarter of that, what he's doing, which is pretty rad. But also then I thought, oh, that's going to teach him some really cool stuff like that. Just doing that right now is going to pay off. It's just going to pay huge dividends later on in his life, in every aspect of his life, that he's able to do something like that. Like that's incredible.
Yeah, I do think, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, after yesterday, we were both just, I took some time to reflect on the wow brain, or there's the book, The Gap and the Gain. How important it is to reflect and remember the gain, or like there's wow and ow brain, or gap and gain, same concept around. You could focus on, oh, it should be like this, like I should be doing more. Look at the older kids. I should, that's the gap, or that's the owl brain living in the, oh, it should be different. Versus the gain, or the wow brain, is like, no, look how, like you, as you were just saying too, look how far I've come. Look at where, like I was just remembering. I was like, man, you used to be on the other ramp, like you barely, like I barely even remember him on this ramp, because he doesn't need me to come, be there all the time anymore. So I haven't seen him on this bigger ramp that much. And I was just like, man, think of how far you've come, like how much time you spent on the small ramp and just learning how to get, like it's not even easy to ski down this stuff, because it's like this really brittle, these brittle plastic spikes. Like if you fall on one of those fake ramps, it shreds your skin. Like it's not
Mm.
fun just to even ski down them. They have to water them. Like there's a little sprinkler thing, so they have to water them to come down. Like again, there was a lot of work just to learn how to ski down. It's totally different than snow. Just learning how to ski down it. But yeah, how important it is for ourselves and other kids to just take that time to live in the wow brain, or live in the gain of, man, look at all that you've been able to do to get to this point, and not live too much in that owl brain of like, oh, I should be doing more. I should be doing this. Look at what the older kids are doing. But yeah, I was impressed, because I haven't seen it in a while, seen him do it in a while. But yes, even just skiing down that stuff's hard, and then skiing down backwards is a whole other thing on that stuff. And it's a great, wow, this is why I like sports in general. Like, with this sport, you get, you're people are watching you, and you're sitting there doing something that you haven't done before. Almost every time you're pushing the edge and doing something you haven't done yet. So, you're largely going to probably fail, if it's your first time. It's not going to go the way you want. It might hurt. There's so much about, yeah, I like for him, and I mean, he found this sport. I never did this, but I do think, yeah, it's a great. Again, I think with a lot of sports and activities, it's putting yourself out there, getting uncomfortable, facing your fears, doing it anyways,
Hmm.
not doing it the way you wanted, getting up, doing it again. Certainly a great cycle of being able to build grit and resilience that, yeah, I do think will serve him well in other aspects of life.
Yeah. I find it so fascinating. There's things that we do and fail at, yet there's like something in there. Like we think, like I think about William, like, you know, he must have fallen a billion times, but but it's like there's something in him that goes, no, I'm gonna, like, there's something there. Like I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna pull on this thread a little bit longer here. And I think about, you know, something for me. I remember speaking in front of people years ago and bombing. Like it was so bad. It's cringy how bad my talk was and how unprepared I was, even though I thought I was super prepared. And even though I thought I was going to go out and kill it, and it was awful. And I remember walking off stage and thinking, like, knowing I totally bombed. That was awful. Like that was the worst. And yet I was like, oh, there's something there. I want to get better at this. Like there was an exhilaration, there was a fascination, an excitement that I felt, even though I humiliated myself. And I think about, like, what is that? Like, what is that little thing that's inside of us? And I can think of things when I was a kid too, things I was awful at, but I was like, I like this. Like there's something in there that I know if I can get good at this is going to be really cool. Especially something with William, like if he's skiing, like there's potential for bodily harm. There's potential for, you know, mental harm. If, like you're saying, like if there's people watching you, there's a chance for embarrassment. There's all of this stuff that can happen. And yet, it's like, no, there's something here. I'm gonna pull on this thread some longer, a little bit longer, and see what's on the other side here.
Yeah.
And we don't know what that is going to be, like what that's going to be for our kids. And, you know, when they fail at something, I would maybe have the automatic thought potentially that, like, okay, well, we'll go on to something else, or they won't like that, but you know, how many times I've seen my kid come off of the monkey bars, and her hands are just shredded. She's got calluses and like rips and all kinds of stuff. But yet the next day she's right out there again, like trying to do something more. I'm like, wow, like what is that? It's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny on you know, in this sport, when they massively fail or even, you know, get hurt, they're one of the first thing they say is, "Did you get a clip of that?" Like they're like, at least if you fail, get on video so you got something out of it.
Yeah.
No, but there's a ton of learning. But yeah, I find that's one of the most important or satisfying, you know, jobs as a parent, is to help them find that thing where they do want to, even when they do, you know, shred their hands in the monkey bars, or they do want to get right back out there, and it can be something really small, but just to be able to find that thing that they will want to get back out there at and do again. I think that's such an important job, and it could turn out to be something really big that they pursue for a long time, or maybe it's just something small that they're doing for a little while. But yeah, I know that's been something I've enjoyed, is helping them, supporting them, allowing them to find those things that are their passions, that they do have this innate desire to want to get better at, and have it come from them too. It's not, you know, it's not that I want them to get better at it for, you know, it has nothing to do with me. But yeah, and it's funny how it can be the monkey bars, and just being able to get those reps in, how important that can be for something else in their life. Be like, yeah, but do you remember the time that you couldn't even reach them, and then you couldn't even get to the second rung, and then now look at you, you're skipping rungs, and you're, you know, hanging upside down and jumping on it yourself. You know, how that can be used as, you know, gain for something else that they want to do like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about, like, again, Tony Robbins teaches, like, like he calls the 7 master steps of creating lasting change. Number 1, when you're working with someone, is to understand and appreciate their world. So really get rapport. So once you understand that, once you understand where they are, what kind of makes them tick, then the second thing is to get leverage. So they have they can feel what it's like to either overcome the thing or to stay stuck where they're at. And so to help our kids remember, like, oh yeah, like, remember remember when you couldn't even do anything? Remember you couldn't even get up one bar? Remember when you couldn't even get up on your skis? And like, oh yeah, like yeah. So you can see how far you've come. I think that's a big step. It's a big thing. It's just to take a step back and go, whoa. Like we've done a lot here. There's a lot going on. Like, yeah, like my kid's 8 and 4. And I think about all that happened between the time that they were like 0 and they couldn't do anything for themselves to where they're at now. Like even my 4-year-old, like how much has changed even in the last few months in her development. And I think to really appreciate that, to really, and to have them appreciate that as well. Point that out to them. Like, remember when you couldn't do this? Like, look at all the stuff you're doing now. Like, that's incredible. That's awesome. And then they start to get some leverage. It's like, oh yeah, like that does feel good to do that. Yeah, I did do that. It's a big, big thing.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't finished the book. It feels a little repetitive. I mean, the whole book is, it's called The Gap and the Gain. Like the whole book is around how to, and maybe it's important. Maybe there's a lot. I haven't finished it, but as we're talking, like how, all the ways and how important it can be and how helpful it can be to live in the gain, like live in that mindset of, oh wow, look at how far I've come. Look at all that I've done. Progress. Tony also calls progress happiness. I don't. Happiness is a whole other topic, but just being able to live in the progress of things versus live in the land. I mean, especially like with the Olympics on right now, you could live in all kinds of, I should be, look at all those people that are doing these things, right? You could live in this whole realm of, I should be better at this, I should be doing more like this, or I should be practicing. Anyway, you could live in that, but that doesn't help. That creates the opposite effect. That creates disempowerment. That creates a lack of motivation. That creates all kinds of anxiety. But just to live in the gain of, look at how far. Again, it can be anything, right? Look at how far we've come. Look at how far all this technology's come. Look at there was a time where I would not be able to be on camera for any length of time and be comfortable talking about anything. So, there's a lot of gains that we've made that can be really helpful. Just to tie it back to judgment, to not be judgmental. I don't think, if you're living in the gain of how far you've come and accomplished, and I don't think judgment, exists in that world.
Yeah. And I always think about also, look how far we've come as people, like how many things have changed and how our perspective and our lenses have shifted over time. Like, perfect example, you're talking about the Olympics. There's an image that I saw of the 100-meter sprinters. And I mean, the guy that won, he won by 5/1000ths of a second versus the guy that was in second, which is amazing.
There's a lot of zeros before that 5.
Yeah, it was insane. And the image that I saw was the winner, or no, it was the person in last place. I think it was a Jamaican guy. He still did better this year than the winner in whatever Olympics when Carl Lewis won. It was like, so I might be getting the numbers wrong, but it was like he ran 9.82, or Carl Lewis did, to win. And this guy who lost this year or he was in the last place, got 9.81. So he was still, the last place guy was still faster than the winner, a couple decades ago.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, like things have changed so much just to stay the same, essentially. There's still a winner and a loser, and there's still this thing, but like we are really pushing the boundary as to what is capable in any one of us. And as messed up and as corrupt as I think so many things are in the Olympics and that whole system, there's still something that's so awe-inspiring about seeing people just give their all. Like they trained for years for that 5/1000ths of a second.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. I saw that photo of just, and I think it was the tightest ever race, maybe of how close everyone also was in that race. Like just, I mean, yeah, that was remarkable. But yeah, you could live in, yeah, that's a great example of, yeah, I really think judgment lives in that house of the gap of, oh, the gap would be, and you could easily be judging, you could easily be shitting of, oh, I should have been just that tiny bit faster. Like, look at how close it was. Like that was, like all the things you could should about that, and all the judgment you can have around what it could have looked like to be that tiny bit faster, or the guy in last place, like, oh, I just needed one more stride and I would have been anyway. That could be all the judgment, all the owl, or all the gap. Or you could live in the gain of, like you're saying, like, look at how far I've come. Like there was a time when, I would have never even been able to make it to the Olympics. And then even the gain of, like you're saying, like just the progress overall of us as people. Like even that person in last now is, like you're saying, you would have won gold 20 years ago. They're now one of the, fastest. They're one of the top 10 fastest people ever. That's in my mind the game, right? Like even though I came last in
Hmm.
this race, I'm still one of the fastest sprinters of all time. I would have won this event, 20 years ago. I mean, that to me is the game. Like how, there's no judgment in living in that space of mine.
Yeah, and I think for our kids, something that's so important for them, because we're talking about, they will learn so much more from seeing things, from experiencing things than anything that we tell them. So I think of, if I want them to start to overcome things, if I want them to kind of push the limits, then I need to be doing that too, so that they can see an example of that. And I often want to just play things safe, keep the peace, just not have chaos, just have more energy, just not be exhausted or any of that. But I think if we're going to make strides here, like I think life is so much better now than it was 300 years ago for everybody. Like life is so much easier. And so how do we then continue to push these limits? And how do we continue to get better and better over time? And if we want our kids to do that, then we can't expect our kids to even want to do that if it's not something that we enjoy doing either. Like we were on vacation not too long ago, and my wife went down to the gym at our hotel. My wife has been a lot more diligent with going to the gym, and she's like, I'm not missing 2 days in a row. So when we're on vacation, she's like, I'm still going to go. And yeah, I was like, oh, that's good for you. Like, that's awesome. And she went down to the gym, and my oldest one was like, I want to come. I want to come with you. And so I got a couple of pictures on my phone. My wife sent me of them just on the treadmill, and my daughter on the elliptical, and just going through the motions. And she just saw her mom do it. And so she did it because she just saw her mom do it. She saw that her mom was committed, and I don't put it past that, that moment, that was something transformational potentially for my daughter, because she just saw that. And that may not have been a huge deal for my wife. Like may not even remember that years from now, but it's something that may not even be remembered by my daughter, but just that there's that imprint on her soul, on her being, that potentially that could make a big difference, because she saw, oh no, yeah, my mom's doing it. That seems fun. I want to do that too. And it's the same with us. Yeah, like all the things that, yeah, like I'm gonna push through. I'm gonna do this thing I said I wasn't gonna do, but I know it's good for me, and I know I want to do it. I know there's something in here. So our kids will be like, oh yeah, I can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I can think of that with my own parents. Like my dad didn't, he didn't actually talk. Like he didn't try and like preach a lot of advice, but he just, did his life. Like he just, was himself, and how great an example that's been for me, just in terms of how he shows up, right? How he talked, how he, cared for the people, how he's very trustworthy, he's very hardworking, he's very honest. But he never had to tell me those things. He just was those things. And how much that rubs off, just how being that example like how doing those things, how to, like you're saying, like how we can show them, and not just to show them, but also to show ourselves, right? By doing something that we want, that's uncomfortable, that's scary, that's how that can definitely rub off, and how they'll remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the idea that leaders go first, we're not asking, we're not telling people to do something that we would not do, that we're the first ones in there. Like, we are doing this, and we lead by our example. And believe that's true leadership across the board, when it comes to business, when it comes to our personal lives, when it comes to our parenting. I'm always so fascinated when we have these conversations, like how much of this always comes back to this idea of self leadership, of like self direction. That anything I do when it comes to being a parent, it all comes back to, well, where am I within myself? How am I doing this for me, first and foremost? And anytime there's a disconnect, or anytime we have some sort of blowout parenting thing, some chaos, it's usually, if I look back, I can usually think, no, it's because I was not centered. I was not present. And maybe everybody else will have a different perspective, but I only have my own perspective. So that's all I know. And yeah, you said something earlier, which I found fascinating. I want to come back to. You said, I thought you were also going to say something about like not judging yourself. And as you're saying, like, oh yeah, why I didn't say that? Because I do judge myself. I know that I do. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's something to work on. Like, I know that I judge the crap out of myself all the time. And maybe that's why I was thinking about it. But understanding, appreciating their world, about if I want to influence, then I can't, if I want to influence somebody, I can't be judging them. Well, if I want to, maybe I'm not influencing myself because I'm judging myself. And I can see that very clearly.
Yeah.
So thanks for the reminder.
Right. And understanding our own world. Wait, sorry, what was that?
I said, so thanks for the reminder.
Oh, well, it was, it's just, how good you are at taking whatever we're thinking about externally and bringing it back as a reminder internally. I think that was one of the biggest reminders, revelations, ahas, reading Conscious Parenting, Dr. Shefali's book. It was such a good reminder of, she would have all these parents bring their kids in to see her, like, oh, something's going on with my kid, help them, and she'd be like, yeah, okay. And before I talk to the kid, can you and your, spouse come sit in my office first? How she would start with the parents, right? Like, what's going on for them that's showing up in the kid? How are they being, what kind of example are they being in this realm of what they want to talk about? So yeah, just such a great reminder for us as parents to, if we're projecting something on our kids, if we're wanting them to be whatever, less judgmental, or wanting them to be different or a certain way, taking that good hard look in the mirror at ourselves and how we are with our own selves, and then B, being able to better understand, once we've done that self-inspection, then being able to just better understand their world and what's going on for them, and then potentially figuring out something that's an agreement or a co-creation of, oh, well, this is what's going on for me in this situation. This is what's going on for you. Okay, well, that's actually very different than where I started. So what does it look like now?
Yeah. There's a woman, or a mother, who had traveled by foot with her son, her young son. They traveled, a long ways, days, to go see the great master, the guru, Mahatma Gandhi. And she wanted to help her son. And her son was just addicted to sugar. He just would not stop eating sugar. And so she said, if anyone can help him, it's the great Gandhi. And so they traveled for days on foot to go see him. And they stood in line with all these other people who were going to get to gain counsel from Mr. Gandhi. And they got to the front of the line, and She said, I want to help my son. I want you to help him stop eating sugar. It's just really unhealthy and he's really not doing well. And it's just not good. So I want you to help him not eat sugar anymore. And so Gandhi said, okay. I want you to come back in 1 week and I'll help you. I'll help your son. And she's like, okay. So they go back, and so the next week they come back and they get to the front of the line again. And they say, okay, we were here last week. You said this week to come back and you were going to help my son stop eating sugar. And so Gandhi looked at the little kid. He said, stop eating sugar. And that was it. And the mom was like, that's it? He's like, yes. And she said, well, why didn't you just tell us that last week? And he said, well, last week I was still eating sugar.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. So we can't lead from what we don't live. Or it's so much more powerful to lead where you live. So we are the example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good story, yeah. Yeah.
All right, my friend. Let us go forth and lead from where we live.
Yeah, man.
Any final thoughts?
Just even being vulnerable, like sometimes, like just being real about it, right? Like there are some times where I'm in that example. I'm still eating sugar. So rather than, just trying to tell the kids, no, you don't eat sugar. Yet I'm still doing it. I'll, being real, being vulnerable. Look, this is something I'm working on. I want better for you. You know what I mean? Like, I might not be, I might not be able to slay this dragon right away, but also letting them know that, you know what I mean? Like letting them into our world as well as we're working through something, and because it might take us a while to stop that thing. In the meantime, I want better for them. So I guess that's just this thing, right? Not being hard on ourselves, being willing to be open and real with our kids, letting them into, letting them, again, not just trying to get into their world, letting them into our world and be like, look, this is why this is such a big thing for me. And they go, oh, I can see that. Okay. Now I understand why you're asking that. And you want me, to do it this way, because this is something you want even better for yourself. So that's what comes up for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so it's understanding, and appreciating their world, and allowing them to understand and appreciate our world. And we can't expect anybody to understand and appreciate our world if we don't tell them.
Yeah, unless we know it ourselves.
No one knows what's going on in our own heads.
Yeah, and like letting them know that we don't have it all figured out, right? There is some stuff that we're still working on, right? So that they can see that it's, constant growth, constant evolution.
Yeah, and so that they can do the same.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, my man.
All right. Well, enjoy the day.
Yeah, you too.
See you next time.